Welcome to video 4, where we're moving on to chapter 12, talking about family and the workplace, and the relationships that we establish in both. So let's start with a definition of family. Family is a self-defined unit made up of any number of persons who live or have lived in a relationship with one another over time in a common living space, and who are usually, but not always, united in marriage or kinship. Now, there are a lot of different definitions of a family, and I think we would all agree that the traditional definition of a family, or the traditional sense, is kind of an outdated view of a family. I think the book even says that less than 10% of the American families fit into the older traditional model of a family, which is mother and father and their two biological children. So we know that the role has changed a lot, and the term family a lot of times can be self-defined in the fact that there are different people in our lives that play the role. But for the specific term family in this chapter, they do a nice job of kind of encompassing all of that, which means people that are part of our biological family or people that have influenced us enough in our lives that we consider them family. So in that definition, there are 4 different parts of it that I think are important for us to pull forward and talk about. The first one is that it's self-defined, meaning that you get to define it, right? It's not some textbook handing you a definition and saying this is family, and if it falls outside of that, you don't get to call it a family. So it is self-defined. It can include any number of people. It's people that either live or have lived in relationship together, and people that are united, but not always, in marriage or some sort of formal kinship. So it's not the person that goes to the justice of the peace and gets married and has 2 biological children anymore, right? It's not that as the family unit anymore. It is a self-defined number of people that either live currently or have lived together in a relationship, and that are usually united in some sort of marriage or kinship as the family base. So let's talk about the different types of families that there are. The first one is your family of origin, and that is the family that you were raised in. This is the person or the people that raised you. You could have more than one because you could have been influenced by multiple groups of families when you were raised. But this is the family that you would say raised you if you had to answer that question. The second one, voluntary kin, is people that you consider family. So not people that raised you, but the people that influenced you enough that you would consider them part of your family unit. The third type is the nuclear or natural family. And that is a family that consists of a mother, a father, and their biological children. So these are people that the children in the family unit are part of or are directly related to the 2 people that formed the kinship and created the family. The extended family is the additional relatives that are related to this nuclear or natural family. So these are the extended family, like aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and so on and so forth. A blended family is the parents and the siblings share a biological parent. So think about half brothers or sisters or step brothers or sisters. That is when they come together with some sort of shared parent in a family. And then the last one is the single parent family, and that is when you have one parent that is raising either one or all of the children in the family. So how this relates to family and communication and family interaction, obviously the family that you were raised in, the family that influenced you, the people that influenced you, their communication patterns and the amount of time you interacted as a family will influence your adult actions, the way in which you raise your family or choose not to raise your family. In some cases, it helps influence what not to do. But it directly reflects that in two different ways, actually. The book talks about two different models of family interaction that will absolutely influence that. The first one is the circumplex model that says that a family is basically has three dimensions. It is adaptability, cohesion, and communication. And in this model, it says that a family must find some sort of synergy between all three of those things in order to have a good, solid communication in each of them. So for adaptability, it's basically how chaotic or rigid a family is. And you can see that on the chart in front of you, or the graph in front of you. It shows you chaotic up here and rigid here. And then under cohesion, it is how high the cohesion is or how low it is. So you can see low over here and high over here. So basically the emotional bonding or feelings of being one unit is what the cohesion means. And these influence the communication of your family unit. So as you can see by the different colors on this picture, this chart, the middle is pretty much where you want to be, because extremes on either end of cohesion or flexibility, adaptability or cohesion, is unhealthy. Extremes on anything are unhealthy. But what they're saying is that in order to interact as a family well, have a good communication, you must have a very middle of the ground adaptability for how the family changes and their power structure and how stable they are and what their attitudes, values, and beliefs are, what their comfort level is. You want to be middle of the ground. You don't want to be super low or super high. And in cohesion, which refers to, again, emotional bonding or the togetherness that they feel, you want to be in the middle. So too high or too low will be an extreme. And you can see yellow in the middle is where you want to be. You want to be at the core of both. When you have extremes on either end, you will actually pull out and you will feel disconnected or separated or disengaged from your family. And then you've got the green part, which is the way extremes, which is completely disengaged or completely not flexible with your family. So you can see that. Take a second and kind of think about where maybe you fall with your family in the circumplex model of family communication. The next one is the idea that in interaction with families, you have the family communication pattern, which is influenced by two things: conversation and conformity. And what it says is that the varying levels of how you welcome conversation and how you welcome conformity will actually define what type of family you are. And this model actually then goes to further explain them in very specific areas. The first one is consensual families, and that is families that are equal parts conversation and conformity. So they love conversation. They have that as a very strong value in their family, and they have rules and they have structure. So they are equal parts conversation and conformity. Pluralistic families, the next one, that is very high on conversation, but very low on conformity. So very high on feelings and honesty and talking about them and expressing yourself, but very low on the rules, on control over what's going on. So the book, I think, kind of says no control in this definition, but everybody's honest. And what you actually develop is children that are very well equipped to deal with conflict because the conversation is so high in this type of family, because conversation is so valued to the 100th degree. So you absolutely have the ability to handle conflict because you're able to talk about it and reason with it and get a resolution because you were raised that way. Protective is the next one, and that is when you are low on conversation but high on conformity. So low on the feelings and talking about them, but very high on the rules and the structure and the control over the family. This typically produces people that are ill-equipped to handle conflict because conversation, talking about your feelings, expressing yourself, speaking up when somebody does you wrong, when your feelings are hurt, getting to some sort of resolution, that isn't part of the family interaction communication pattern. So you really don't know how to deal with conflict because you didn't have a lot of talking it through as your influence in your family unit. The last one is this laissez-faire type family where they are low in both. So low in conversation and low in conformity. So typically in this area, children feel very disassociated with their family because they are absent of the ability to express themselves, to have honesty, to have the ability to communicate strong feelings on both ends, feelings of joy and excitement and empathy and hurt and sadness and pain, right? All of the things, not just the bad, but the good. And then conformity, not just the bad rules that drive us crazy in a family unit, but the good rules as well that provide us structure and stability in a family are missing as well. So those are the two different types of family interaction models. There's the circumplex that talks about how you want to be harmonious in the middle. You don't want extremes of adaptability and cohesion. And this one here, which is the family communication patterns model, which says that conversation and conformity are two parts of the communication pattern, and they to varying degrees in which they are a predominant part of the communication pattern. You are one of these four areas. So now let's talk about the different models of parenting and how that influences the types of communication that we have in our family. There are four different types. The first one is the traditional couple. The second one is the independent couple. The next one is the separate couple. And the last one is the mixed couple. So for definitions, the first one, traditional, are couples that are together, married in some sort of agreed kinship, who are interdependent on each other and who show a lot of signs of sharing in roles in which develop and strengthen the family, and share in companionship and the different roles that strengthen a family when it comes to companionship. Independent couples are, again, together, married, or in some sort of agreed kinship with each other, who exhibit the sharing of companionship just like traditional couples do, but in their minds, kind of like, I think the book uses the term psychologically interdependent, they give each other their independent space, and they typically have a hard time meshing together their separate lives. So of course they're together as far as sharing companionship and being a couple, but they are very much independent of each other. A lot of times there's a lot of conflict when it comes to these types of couples because they are going their own separate ways. And the only part that keeps them together is their agreed marriage and their togetherness as part of the family unit. Separate are together couples, married couples, or agreed kinship who support the idea that being married and being a family unit is a good idea, but they typically value the individual in the relationship over the family unit. So they definitely believe in individuality. They definitely believe that the person comes before the couple. They do not depend on each other like a traditional model would. They are very interdependent of each other. And just like independent typically has a lot of conflict, opposite from that, separate typically has no conflict at all, or they're trying to avoid conflict. So it's not that there is no conflict. The conflict is there, is they don't address the conflict. So there's no addressing and talking about the conflict. The mixed couple is a couple where the partners have differing perspectives on which one they are from the above list. So traditional, independent, separate. So one couple will say, yeah, we're in this together. We have shared compassion and shared companionship and shared emphasis on the family. And then the next person in the relationship, the other person will say, yeah, we're very independent.